Hi everybody. I just wanted to share with you guys some tips for if you're going away for a long weekend or going on vacation. I know it's an anxious time for those of us that put a lot of time and effort into our saltwater aquariums. So here are just a few easy tips. My aquarium is pretty self-sustaining. What I do is I do run a UV sterilizer, and so I usually take that out and I go ahead and put both filter socks in instead of just one. That way, yeah, they're going to be a little clogged by the time you get home, but at least that way the person watching your tank, or even if you don't have anybody watching your tank. I'm lucky enough that I have somebody. My mother-in-law stays over here to watch my dog, so therefore she can always keep an eye on the tank. And she's not a saltwater aquarist, so I have to make things pretty simple. So one thing I do is I have a 10-gallon trash can. I use my RO water, and I put that in there. I do top that off usually the day before I leave. Make sure there's 10 gallons in there. That should last however long, week, whatever. There's the container I use for my RO water, so I go ahead and leave a little bit of that, little bit extra next to it in case she'll need to top that off for me. Another thing I do, I make sure and explain to her how the thermometer works, temperature gauges, all that kind of stuff. So I go ahead and make sure all that's going good. I do take one seaweed grazer or algae grazer out of the tank. I do have her fill one. And another thing I do is I go ahead and separate out, my fish eat frozen mysis, so I separate those out for her. 2 cubes a day. They get one around noon and one around dinner time. So thawed out. So I just separate those into baggies for each day. And that's really all she has to do. She doesn't have to put her hand in the tank or do anything like that other than putting seaweed on the algae grazer once a day. So that's the one tip that I'd always like to give people, and I've read this plenty of times with people that have a lot more years of experience than I do, is that on your the best thing to do is not add any new equipment for several weeks before you leave. No auto feeders, no any kind of new equipment that you haven't, because you haven't tested it out. You don't know if it could fail, and you certainly don't want that to happen while you're trying to enjoy your vacation. Secondly, I would not, this is my own personal preference, but I wouldn't recommend adding any new livestock several weeks before you leave as well. I personally am kind of OCD about that. I like to watch the fish, see if they're eating good, all that kind of stuff. So those are, basically the tips, just, to make things just as easy as possible. Then usually the day before I ever leave, go out of town, I always do an extra water change that week. So everything's fresh for while you're gone. Clean the glass, clean the back of the tank, that kind of stuff. But that's about it, And if you don't have anybody to watch your tank, I would recommend, and I've gone at that, I've had that route in the past before. Fish can go for a week, no problem with that eating. In the wild, they probably go longer than that. So one time I made the mistake several years ago when I first had a saltwater aquarium. I made the mistake of buying one of those little cube block things you just stick in the water, and it was made for saltwater. However, that was a disaster. I mean, it didn't totally destroy the water. There was no dead fish, no dead coral, but yeah, it didn't. My water quality was not very good when I came back from vacation. So that was a mistake. So if you're not going to have anybody come over and watch it, I would just let the fish, if you're only going to be gone a week, more than a week, that's a little iffy, especially if your fish are using them. You could even feed a little extra a few days before you leave if you're going to be gone and not have anybody watch your tank. But I would make things as simple as possible, not change any extra equipment. There's certain things you can't control. Heater goes out, power goes out in your house, that kind of stuff. I mean, luckily I have a Ecotech MP40 on my tank, and I have a battery backup, which is right in here. So if the power goes out, it could probably it'll run on low power for, I don't know, 12 to 15 hours, something like that, which gives some circulation. It doesn't help the heater situation though. So that's something, you know, but that's an unforeseen thing that you just can't plan for, unfortunately. You know, it is what it is. Aside from never taking a vacation, which is silly. So those are just basic ideas for, you know, for going on vacation. And the point is to go on vacation, you know, to have a good time, not stress out about your tank. So, and another thing too, and it's not a bad idea, if you have a good local fish store near you, just, you know, go ahead and I would let them know you're going out of town if you're, you know, if you're friends with them or know them real good, you know, in case there is something wrong, you know, or have them look in on your tank a couple times a week, or if you know somebody that can look in on your tank a couple times a week, I would do that, if you can. But other than that, I mean, you know, once you do everything you know is possible, I mean, you know, your tank should run itself, and it'll probably be even better for it because our hands won't be in the tank constantly when we're home looking at it. So, anyway, just some tips I wanted to share. And thanks for watching. And if anybody's going to be traveling, have a great vacation. Try not to worry too much about your tank.